Welcome, listeners. Today, we are diving into an exciting topic that's transforming the world of customer service right now. As contact centers evolve, the ability to analyze and act on conversations in real time is becoming a game changer. Today, we are going to explore these advancements with two key figures from the field of conversation intelligence. First, we have Davey, the Senior Director of Service Delivery at Crevo AI. Don brings in 25 years of experience in the software and BPO industry. His expertise spans around call centers, SaaS products. In fact, I think I know Don for like 10 years now, since I started in this vertical. I also have Steve here. Steve is the EVP and Chief Customer and Strategy Officer of Crevo AI. Steve's background as both an entrepreneur and Fortune 100 executive gives him a very comprehensive view of business landscape. His focus on product and strategy management has been a key contributor to Crevo AI's success today. I let Steve and Don introduce themselves. Steve, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you. And first of all, Manu, thank you for having us today. It's great to see you as always, and really look forward to the conversation here. So awesome. Again, Steve Trier, Chief Customer Officer here at Crevo AI, recently merged. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so I've been with the company since the very beginning, and I've had a chance to play roles in product and customer success and other areas of the business. And it's just an exploding landscape, and just the change in the last 5 years has been just dramatic in the abilities that technology is bringing forward to service customers, improve satisfaction, reduce friction points. And a big area of focus right now is agents and helping agents be more successful in a very complex environment. So a lot's changing. It's been a blast to be a part of the evolution of the technologies, and there's a lot more to come, and I look forward to talking to that here in the next few minutes. But as much has changed in the last 5 years, I think more will change in the next 5 months. So it's a really exciting time. But anyway, glad to be here and glad to meet everybody.
Thank you so much, Steve, for being here. We really appreciate that. We look forward to our discussion today. Don, would you like to introduce yourself?
So my background is running call centers, where I started in this industry. And during that time, I always wished I had something like a conversation intelligence platform to help me manage my call centers. So this was when Steve and I talked about almost 9 years ago. It seemed like a great fit for me, and so that's basically my background.
Thank you so much, Don. I am so excited to have both of you to talk to us specifically about conversation analytics and how it's transforming the contact center world. And as you said, Steve, 5 years, whatever it has done in 5 years, we are going to see more happening just in 5 months. That's just the pace how technology is advancing today. We will also touch on a very significant development, the recent merger of Tether and Awaken Intelligence, resulting in the formation of Crevo AI. Steve, would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's been an exciting opportunity for us. So a little bit of background, we originally we were Tether, and we were Conversational Analytics. So what that meant is that, our goal has always been to enable companies to listen to their customers at scale. So a lot of companies, traditionally are using surveys or focus groups or other ways to understand their customers, when indeed customers are calling into their contact centers, having conversations with their agents every day, and exposing a ton of information about their relationship with the brand and how things are going, issues they're having, questions they need answered, ways to improve the business. So all of that intelligence is there. And so one is you have to listen to it at scale, but then you have to make sense of it. And then so you have to sort of like understand it. And the ability to understand it is really where, we've tried to make the technology work, is to take potentially millions of interactions for our customers and synthesize that down into the most important relevant points that can help them improve customer satisfaction, drive better return on their investments, and help their agents and reduce agent churn. And so very specific things. And really, once you have that understanding, then you can act. Now, traditionally, that acting had been in the form of improved coaching. So in other words, you could actually take this information, you could sit with your agents. You have a lot of information now about how agents are doing with customers. You know where they need more training, know where they need more support, you know where they maybe need better knowledge articles. So you could actually change processes inside your operations to actually help your agents based on what you were learning from all these conversations. And then you could use that data to inform other systems. So we have customers who literally take information that they've learned from conversations, and then they put that into a CRM, or they put that into a ticketing system to drive more actions to actually support the customer. So it's a very rich and robust. What the merger really brought us and we were moving into this area, is by taking the best of what we'll call the conversation analytics, and now the ability to do that in real time. So, coaching an agent will always be important. Providing the agent the tools and processes necessary to be successful based on that will be very important. But the difference is now you can actually give that agent guidance right in the moment of truth. So now that we know what agents struggle with the most, or maybe what knowledge they need at that critical moment, because we see all of that analytics, you can serve that up in real time. So that agent doesn't wait for a coaching session to say, hey, you forgot to do this verification step, or this disclosure was needed on this call. Real-time guidance will actually move the agent in that direction right when they're in that conversation with the customer, and ensure that the customer gets the right service and the right things, and that we protect the business by making sure that we're doing compliance and those other things. So the marriage of the post-call and the real-time really create a unique opportunity that we think helps us help our customers in multiple assets of listening, understanding, and acting.
Agreed, absolutely. And Steve, that is so true. And that's a perfect segue into the first question that I wanted to actually ask you. Most of the time when we talk to people about speech analytics specifically, and I'm talking about small, medium businesses that have not explored conversation analytics right now. There is this perception that conversation analytics is a transcription as well as some keyword spotting, which cannot be farther from the truth, right? In the end. Yeah. So tell us a little more about how much nuanced conversation analytics is really.
Yeah, so speech analytics, so again, if you're going to take, and we have customers who literally have millions of conversations a year and synthesize that down, you use a combination of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what you can do is that we've taught Tether, and in many industries, so what we call it is out-of-the-box insight. And what out-of-the-box insight means is that there are things that are said in conversations that have more value than other things. And some of those things are very basic around automation of QA. So as an example, if you want to know that your agent properly greeted the customer, you're not looking for a specific set of words, because all agents do that a little differently. What you're looking for is with machine learning and AI, you can say, yes, I see a proper greeting, and I see that it was branded properly. You can see that they probed for the next issue, like, how may I help you today? What issues are you facing? What questions you have? Are we actually trying to get to the root cause of our customers' issues and questions? And then you can see proactive movements like proactive guidance, or taking advocacy. And again, some of these things are very specific around why was the customer calling? Were they facing an issue with a bill? Did they see a charge they didn't understand? Did they not see a discount that they were expecting to get? But then they can also see how the agent handled that. Not only do they look up the information, but does the agent say things like, you know what? I am actually here to solve your problem. We're going to get on this journey together today, and we're going to get this resolved. So not only do you get the specifics of what are happening, but you understand the behaviors and the emotions that are tied to that. And then at scale, you can start to break that down. So again, using machine learning and AI, you can detect these very important and relevant parts of the conversation and turn it into QA management, reasons for contact, what's driving handle time or silence time, what's driving too many transfers, where was my agent confident in their proactive guidance, maybe where they were showing some confusion or some uncertainty in their ability to answer the question. All of this information can be brought up. And it gives you kind of two things to look at, is that you can use it. And I think a lot of times people look at it and say, this is about quality management. And don't get me wrong, this is a huge opportunity around quality management. A lot of companies will typically, and this is your business, Manu, is like, we used to look at a couple, 2-3 agents, a couple, 2-3 times a month and try to guess how all their interactions was going. That just doesn't work when you can listen to every single interaction. And then like a team like yours can say, hey, based on everything we see, here's a very targeted set of coaching that helps that agent deliver the experience. But the other part is customer journey friction is in the conversation. So what you're uncovering in speech is what part of the customer journey caused them to actually have to reach out to you anyway. And so what you really want to do is go, not only can I help the agent have a better experience when that happens, but could I have avoided that conversation altogether? Could I have improved my web channel? Could I have made it my first contact a better contact so I don't have a repeat contact? And so those are customer friction journey points too, where the AI and the ML are, again, using a much more comprehensive set of the language to determine, what are the opportunities for your business and your agents.
Absolutely, Steve. And that makes purpose. When I put this back, on a timeline, right? And when we think about QA from 10 years back, 15 years back, when people listening to calls, 2 or 3 calls, from there we went to 8-9 years back to keyword spotting. And that's where this misconception got in, that all you can do is basically have some keywords that the agents can talk about and you can tag that. But today, that cannot be farther from the truth, because now you are understanding the context of that conversation. You don't have to tell the engine that here is a phrase and look for all the similar phrases. No, you're telling the engine, hear the phrase, understand the context, and tell me when it happens in a conversation. Yes. And that's where we are making a difference. And of course, you have the gold mine of data just sitting right there. What are some things that your customers like? What, do they even like calling you? Are there better ways to be able to handle this communication itself? And that gets me to this question, Don. When you think specifically, you are closest to this right now, right? So when you think specifically about some case studies on contact center capacity, improving the capacity itself by making agents more efficient, or sentiment tagging, or call intent tagging, what are some examples that come to your mind?
So a lot of people are depending today on things like surveys to understand the things that you've just described, okay? The problem with surveys is you're looking at the extremes, okay? People on the edges are either really unhappy or really happy, and those are the only ones that respond to those surveys. So you're missing the vast majority of your consumers or your customers in that space, okay? So what we've been able to do is create, taking those surveys, is to create models that predict the outcome of a survey on every single interaction. So you can expand that information that the customers have been giving back in surveys and do that on every single interaction. You can do that. One of the new products we just put out is CSAT AI, for example, which predicts whether or not somebody would put, what they would put in a survey if they were to put in a survey. And you can use that on all the things that Steve was just describing to understand where in the customer journey that you're creating dissatisfaction with your customer. And not only that, is you can take that information, since you've got all the interactions, you can quantify it. You can, within the tool, be able to put a price tag on what that's costing you. So that when you sit down in the meeting with the IT director and point out that this particular area in the website is costing you $6,000 a month, you give everybody the option and the opportunity to reprioritize what they work on to solve that problem and reduce cost effectively. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense, Don, and you are so right. If you're lucky, you get 6%. If it is your best day, you get 10%, response rate on a survey. And as my leader and mentor, Jim, says, people only respond to surveys when they are pissed. And now what you have is basically a very narrow and siloed data set that is only telling you about the people who actually thought, okay, let me go ahead and fill the survey out. But you sacrifice 90% of other customers who had something to say. They just didn't fill a survey specifically. So knowing your entire universe now helps you do exactly what you said, build cross-functional use cases where you can go to your IT directors. Maybe you can even go to your policy guys and talk to them about, hey, you know what, this red tape is too much. Maybe we can do something to reduce this process itself. Absolutely. Yeah.
The neat thing about that, Manu, is it turns those people into allies. Because when they fix the problem and they can say, hey, they get to put in their quarterly report that they helped reduce $6,000 worth of cost per month in the call center dealing with this particular issue, and improved customer satisfaction as well. So they get to be a part of the success, right? And that's real important for the organization to have everybody working together for the same goals.
Don, that's so perfect, and that takes me to my next question. Apart from tech itself, when one thing that we hear a lot from people, a lot from companies looking to implement speech analytics, conversational AI is, there is this minuscule fear somewhere of, hey, how am I going to implement it? I've never done this. How is my QA team going to react? How are my people going to react? Are they going to buy into it? So what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that you have come across from your customers, and what advice would you give them?
So in the context of structural changes, okay? I mean, just thinking in terms of what's changing. Let's take the agents, for example, okay? So today, people maybe look at 2 to 4 interactions for that agent per month, right? Out of their 1,000 or so interactions that month. And then they judge the agent. That's not something that agents like. It's not something managers like, right? So by doing what we're just describing here, is by looking at all of these interactions, you can change that dynamic, because now you're looking at all of their calls, right? Not just a few where one of them might have a bad day or a bad call and they're just unlucky that falls into what they were looked at or the QA was done on. You can see this across all of their calls, and then compare with agents what their results are, and see where people actually need to improve and where they're doing well and all that kind of stuff. So if I was to say to you, Manu, I looked at 2 of your calls this month, and on one of them you didn't do the greeting, so you're a bad agent. Would you accept that?
Oh, Don, in one part of my life, I was actually an agent, and I used to go through this. We're based on one chat.
Yeah. But if I was to tell you I looked at all 1,000 calls, and 85% of the time that you are doing the greeting properly, but 15% of them, you're not. So let's go through and look at what you can do differently to correct that number. Does that sound like something more acceptable to you in terms of a coaching?
Absolutely, and that gives me an exact right path to go on.
Yeah. So that dynamic will change. And as I just mentioned before, when you go into meetings as a call center manager, or as a CEO, what you expect from your call center manager is for them to be able to tell you, why are people calling? What is the issues that are causing problems with these products and those kinds of things. You now have the ability to get those answers and be able to express those to the other leaders within the group, so that they can, as I said, become your allies in going and fixing those issues. Right? So you become an information center, or a place where you're going to get the answers to the questions that everybody's looking for. Today, that's hard to do manually, to go through and look at enough calls to be able to answer a lot of those questions. And you definitely can't do it quickly. With a conversation intelligence platform, you're able to go in and do that very fast. And like I said, it's there's a value to being the person who's got the answers in the room.
Absolutely.
And not only a value to that person, but also to the rest of the group, because then they can go and take action and do the things that are necessary to deal with that journey friction that Steve was describing earlier, to correct the things that are creating the problems that you're having with customers.
Yeah. Great, Tom. And go ahead, Steve.
To add on something there that I just and this is because it's really timely, because we were just sitting with a customer on Friday, Don and I were, and just kind of going over their onboarding journey. We were sitting down and we were just like, hey, can you tell us more about how this went? What went well? And so very much around the questions you have around the adoption of the platform. And one of the things that came up that really, I know, stuck with me and I think was really important was, we started talking again sort of about this ability to now get real-time support. So, one of the things that everyone's agreeing on is if you go talk to customers, there's two things. There's another thing that technology is doing, and it's rightfully so. Technology is taking low complexity questions and problems out of the contact center. Virtual agents, virtual assistants, those things are taking them out. What that means is that the agent is left with all of the really tough stuff. You know what I mean? So like, it used to be like 50% of my calls were hard. Now 80% of my calls are hard. And when you think about that and what that means to an agent's engagement and to their loyalty to the brand, it puts pressure on them. And so that's a really big thing that we're hearing. And that's where we think the real-time guidance comes in and really can make a difference. So in that example of, the agent gets guidance and bumped right in the moment. And the one we talked about was, we talked about this idea that sometimes something that happens very infrequently starts to happen more frequently. And if you were able to detect that in real time and you could diagnose it, you could then put something back to the agent in real time to say, hey, we've noticed that there's an issue with this system, and here's what we need to let the customers know, because we know that this resolution is on the way and here's what's happening. So right in the moment of truth, you've done something faster, you've given it to the agent in real time, you've given them the confidence to answer the question and be an advocate for the customer and really solve the problem. And in effect, sort of reduce that anxiety of hey, it's going to be a rough day, to I've got this extra guidance coming along that's actually helping me throughout the course of my day. And where we see this really, really impactful with new agents. So as it takes a long time to ramp up a new agent, and you've been through that process, but what if there was something there that said, hey, when there's a conversation about this, here's 2 or 3 possible responses, and then based on that response, here's another way to guide the customer. So all kind of like, once you have all that historical data, the ability to guide the customer or the agent in real time, we think is going to be very impactful. And that's why we're pretty excited about the merger that we talked about earlier.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, when you think about it, it's helping you improve 2 key KPIs in real tangible world. One is your agents are happier. Second, your customers are happier. Because unhappy agents will result into unhappy customers no matter what. Now, a new agent, it takes some time to build that soft skill and empathy to take hard calls one after other and be the same person that is representing your brand. For a new agent, having something that is coaching them real time to do this, that's amazing, Steve. Yes.
That's amazing. And by the way, here's the funny thing. And you reduce cost.
Yes.
You reduce the cost to serve your customer. Like things got resolved faster, or we had less phone calls about the same thing. So not only, to your point, like those 2 key metrics are critical of agent happiness and customer happiness, but you did all that while spending less money doing it. And so like, it's the trifecta, if you will. So it's spot on.
One thing to add to this is that when people are creating workflows, they have this image that a conversation is very linear, that one thing happens right after the other. That's not the way conversations work. They're very back and forth. They circle around. So think about a new agent who's got a whole checklist of things that they need to do, but the customer is taking them around in circles. And they're like, did I do that or not do that? Or did I say that or not say that? Especially after they are doing call after call after call in that scenario. So having the real time be able to tell them, okay, you've hit this point, you've hit this check mark, you hit this check mark, you hit this check, as you've done these things is a really big aid for helping them keep track of the things that they need to do to make sure that they get that call to a solution.
Absolutely. Don, this has me so excited because it's solving every problem that I can think of I faced as an agent. In fact, Funny enough, I have been on both sides of the coin. So I've been an agent where I've seen that I got focused so much on that one issue that was there on one chat that I got coached upon, that maybe I made other mistake. And then when that was caught, I made another mistake, and it was a never ending cycle. Same time, I was a business analyst once, and I saw how difficult it was to gather customer feedback and process it and make it something that is actionable enough. And now you have one tool that is doing all of it. And with that, one question that I think not just me, but all the listeners would love to learn more about as well is, what, being in this industry for so long, implementing hundreds of customers, what are some key advice that you give them on speech analytic implementation? How to start? What are some things that they need to do?
Well, I'm going to bring up something that probably most of my clients didn't think about when they started the implementation process, and that is because when you're an ops person and you're talking on the phone, you realize that the telephone call is stereo. The agent is on one channel and the customer is on one channel. What they don't realize is that when those calls are stored, they're often stored in a mono channel. In other words, they take the two channels and they collapse them together into one channel. Okay? And they also compress the audio, take out all the fidelity, so that it's just good enough that a person can understand it. Okay? People are very good at that. They're very good at picking out voices to know who's talking, and they're also very good at filling in gaps when there's low fidelity. Machines aren't that good, okay? They're not good at those two things. So what that does is it introduces a couple of issues. You have to split those mono channels apart, and that can sometimes cause errors. And so the insights are missed in certain cases. It also causes mistranscriptions from the fidelity standpoint, okay? Or more mistranscriptions than what you would normally get, right? So again, then you have to spend more time and effort to go in and identify those mistranscriptions and augment your insight gathering so that you can take account for this. Okay? So if there was any one piece of advice I would give people is make sure that if you're going to send in audio, send in stereo, high fidelity audio. Save yourself a lot of time and energy going forward.
That's
one thing.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point, Don, and I want to kind of expand on it. So the reason a lot of companies store that in a mono or a compressed format is because they want to save cost. But with Crevo AI now, they don't have to worry about it because all of those calls are being sent to you. And you will store them anyways, right? So they can have high level stereo, all the PCM, everything activated and still get, cost savings of call storage as well. Yeah, that's amazing. And Steve, when we think about implementation from the strategic perspective, what is one thing that you have seen executives missing, or maybe you would just love that they knew about it and implemented it from the start?
Yeah, so there's, and again, we have this conversation a lot. So I think one of the things that people, and Don actually talks about this really well, and I've been adopting it, to be honest with you, is one of the big changes in the process itself is a pretty straightforward process. And as technologies evolve, much like ours has, it went from code to low code to almost no code. So the reality is it doesn't take unique skills. You're not going to have a heavy sense of training. Like a user in the platform, literally within hours, will be up and running and providing value. So the two things that we see is, one, is that they have to be able to move from subjective to objective without feeling concerned that they're failing. And what I mean by that is, let's just say that their CSAT survey was telling them that their dissatisfaction rate was 8%, okay? But again, that's on less than 10% of their interactions. Let's say the CSAT AI comes back and says it's actually 11%. All of a sudden they're gonna be like, ooh, I feel like I'm failing. Like it's telling me I'm worse than I am. It's not telling you that. What it's telling you is for the first time, You actually have objective data across all of your conversations that gives you a real metric. So the mindset is, don't worry about the number, worry about the baseline. Where are you at with this number today? Because your goal is just to make it better tomorrow. Whether it's 8% or 10% or whatever that number is, be comfortable with it. Those numbers might look different when you go to all calls versus a small set of review of things. And that just becomes a mindset. The other one is that if you're new to speech analytics, and I'll kind of focus this more on new customers, is there's this thing with any new technology, is that you can try to boil the ocean. And when you try to boil the ocean, you try to do too many things and you don't do any of them well, and you don't get a big return on any of them. So another thing we really try to focus on is kind of that back to that out of the box insights. Like if I sit down with a customer, I said, if we could improve your satisfaction by 2% in the next 2 weeks, would that be of interest? Yes. If I could reduce the amount of minutes that you spend, and if I could show you a way to reduce minutes that you spend on calls in the course of a half hour that you could implement over the next 2 weeks, would you do that? The answer is yes. These are all metrics we care about, but what happens is sometimes we try to do too much too quickly. So we recommend take a few metrics that are important to the business that you look at in every leadership meeting on Monday morning and actually go have success moving those metrics and build the muscle. Once you build the muscle, once you see satisfaction improving, once you see handle time coming down, once you see transfers being held in place at the right levels, then you're like, okay, I've made a movement in my ROI, I've built some muscle, now let's go do number 2, number 3, number 4, and in short order, you'll be doing 9, 10, 15, 20 different things, but it takes some time to build that muscle and get to that point. So we always say, pick things that are core to the business from an ROI perspective, get some early wins, and use those early wins to evangelize the ability to roll more out.
Absolutely. And that's so well said, Steve. Instead of boiling the ocean, prioritize one key thing that you can make a difference on today. And that's how you get the wins, and you also get buy-in. Because one thing that, a lot of organizations will struggle with is the buy-in into conversational analytic insights. And if you have that key win on, let's say day 15 or day 30, you have already built fans within the organization who are saying, hey, this is working out. And this conversation tells me something that I also want to kind of address here when it comes to accuracy specifically, Steve. One of the things that still comes up because people have that perception from past is transcription accuracy. But based on my understanding, now the transcription accuracy or ASR engines itself have reached a stage where, most of the large ones are not really that different from each other. They are all providing you very accurate transcript as long as you're doing the things that Don asked you to. So when you think about that, what do you think? Is transcription accuracy really that big of an impact anymore to get insights?
Manu, I'd love to sit here and tell you it doesn't matter. I would love to tell you that. But the fact is, it doesn't matter as much as people think it matters. Let me just say it that way. We care very much about good transcriptions. Good transcriptions are always going to be best. But like you said, the engines are all getting better. And honestly, the changes that we've seen in transcription accuracy in the last 2 years is amazing technologies. Now, what's also happening, and this is where you get excited, is you go, not only is transcription happening, but now you're transcribing in any language. So international businesses get the same insights across all of their locations. And what's also happening is that transcription is now becoming to the point where it's language detection. So the other thing we're seeing with transcriptions that was a problem, so one that's getting solved is that you have a line that is supposed to be an English-speaking line, but you have a Spanish-speaking customer come in, your agent speaks Spanish, they move to Spanish. Transcriptions don't look so good because it's trying to transcribe in English. So one is ASR technology is changing not only in transcription, but its ability to detect the language and transcribe in that language. And so that's things that are moving forward. But the other thing is, what people have to pull apart is the difference between transcription accuracy, which is very much better. But the two other things that are really important in the world that we live in today is the speed at which you get that transcription in real time. So in other words, we have a real-time engine. That engine has to be giving guidance to the agent right now. any delays or any latency in that information, well, the agent will stop using it. Like we literally, when we were talking to agents, they're like, if this isn't giving it to me right now, they can't use it. So what you should be looking into is not only the transcription accuracy, but the latency, specifically in real time. The other one that we always try to help customers understand is that just because a transcription is wrong does not mean the insights are wrong. So let me give you an example. You talked about it earlier. When a customer makes a statement, they could use 8 or 9 words to make that statement. And let's just say one of those words is mistranscribed. Machine learning and AI is smart enough to know that the rest of that is there and that is what I'm looking for. And even though this word is wrong, it's likely that this is still what I'm looking for, and it structures that insight anyway. And so that's the advancement of ML and AI, is that it doesn't actually need every word to be perfect. It just needs the general sense of the conversation to be in the right area to be able to produce the insight that you need to do all the things that we've been talking about today. And that's actually something we've been working on for many, many years, which is if you're going to work with an imperfect science, which is getting better, you have to have the ability to deal with some of those imperfections. And that's where we use ML and AI to root out those, what we'll call insignificant transcriptions relative to the ability to get accurate insight.
Thank you, Steve. That's perfect. And you know what that teaches me is that yes, transcriptions are important, but good enough transcriptions can still be utilized to get insights, because now the engine is able to understand context, and one word missing will still be able to tell you exactly what the customer said or meant. Same thing with the agents. When we think of implementing it contact center, conversation analytics specifically, and from both of your perspectives, Steve and Don, because you both offer very, very unique perspective when it comes to my question that is coming, is that what are some key KPIs that a customer should focus on? Because when you think of contact center industry itself, it's very KPI driven. Every supervisor every day is thinking AHT, sales, CSAT, hold time, and so on. So what are some key KPIs that they should focus on? Let's start with that, and then let's dig deeper into it.
Yeah. Hey, Don, I'll let you kind of roll with that one first.
So let's take that from 2 different angles. One is customer experience, right? So the basically in that space, there's a couple of key things that you're going to probably want to be looking at, and that of course is, if you have our CSAT AI, where is that, and where is that moving over time? Okay, because that's looking at all of your interactions in that space, right? But there are things that your agents control fully and some partially that you can be tracking to help them or to help change that. And one of them, and I'll just give you, is what percentage of the time when a customer is telling you that they're having some sort of issue, does your agent respond with something like advocacy? Okay, I'm going to take care of that for you. All right, we're going to get that resolved, right? Or this is what I can do on that to help with that. Okay, those things do matter in terms of the customer perception. Right? You're also on something that not always in the agent control, but it's something that the agents say is that I can't help you, or there's nothing I can do about that. Right? We call that powerless to help. Right? Whether that be an agent training issue or a product issue or a service issue or whatever, you need to be tracking where that's happening to understand why, so that you can go and fix that particular issue. So those are a couple of key areas in the in the CX space. For sales, right? Every time that there is a sales call where it's appropriate, did your agent ask for the sale? Okay. And the reason I say that is that the conversion rate when you do that is dramatically higher. We're talking anywhere from 70% to 300% higher, okay, by simply asking for the business. Okay? Another one would be in a sales environment is if the customer gives an objection, did your agent give a rebuttal? Okay? You think these are really simple things, but you'd be utterly surprised how often sales agents do not do these two things. Okay, and on the just by simply giving a rebuttal, right, the chances of getting a conversion go up again by 60-70%. Okay? So these are kind of things that I think would be really good things to be tracking right out of the gate for those two types of environments.
Got it. And that can be an amazing use case to begin with as well, right? So the moment you implement speech analytics solution, if you are a sales-driven organization, focus on if agents are asking for sale. Are they giving rebuttal? And these two alone can, help you get those quick wins. Makes perfect sense, Don. Go ahead, please.
A simple example of, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Don.
I was going to simple example of use of CSAT. Okay? We have a company that has Zendesk tickets, and they, of course, they send the ticket right to us as soon as it's closed, and we apply a score to it for CSAT, and they immediately take a look at that score. That score is immediately sent back to Zendesk, and if that score is within a particular range, where it's very likely that customer would put in a bad survey or a dissatisfied survey result if they were to fill out a survey, they go back and reopen that ticket and have that reevaluated for, is there any other action we can do to help fix this customer's issue? And they've been very successful in moving up their CSAT scores. Their actual CSAT scores have improved dramatically. And for their business, that was a very big improvement, right? So managing and tracking things like that when it's fast, real time, you didn't have to wait for the survey scores to come in and get, addressed and looked at and reviewed and spread out. You get it right away. You can go take action. There's an example of using that real time information. I think Stevie has some stories about people starting new projects and immediately being able to go back and find out that there was a product issue and solving that. I don't know if you want to tell any of those stories, Steve.
Well, I think, Manu, your question is really interesting because, it's funny. We'll never convince that the operators should change what they're measuring. The ROI is the ROI, and they are important. That's why they're here. There is first call resolution. There is handle time, right? There is customer satisfaction. There is agent satisfaction. These are all very, very good metrics, and they don't change. Here's what's different. And I think what Don's getting to is, while companies understand the ROI, and we honestly 100% believe that a conversation analytics and real-time product can help move that ROI, it's the why. And that's what's missing in a world. So if you sit around today and you don't have conversation analytics or real-time information, and you say, my conversion rate is dropping, why? Where would you even begin to look for that information if you're listening to a handful of calls? When you have 100% of the calls, like Don pointed out, well, we actually have a new competitor and we don't have a good rebuttal for it. Or my agent's training didn't include a couple of rebuttals and we're not using them very well. And the why is what moves the ROI. And so there's kind of one other item that I was just going to talk about. So the thing about, a Creo is it presents the why. Here's why that metric isn't improving. And now we have actionable data. And the action part is a part that we really, really care about, which is insight for insight's sake is worthless. Insight for action's sake is where that's where you want to be. And so I'll give you an example. So we have a new AI machine learning process in the platform called root cause. And what root cause does is you can pick a metric like, say, AHT, average handle time. We want to drive minutes out of the system. We want to help customers more efficiently. What it does is it says, when this thing happens on a call, it adds this much time to every call, more than everything else that happens on that call. So let's say it adds 14 seconds to every call at time that shows up. And by the way, it happens on 62% of your calls. Well, I know that that's a lot of calls, and I know that 14 seconds is a huge portion of my 6.5-minute calls, and you assign a dollar value to the minute, and you can statistically look at that and go, if I were able to reduce that by 20%, we're into the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars based on the scale of that organization. And so the ROI is cost and minutes, but you now have the why in an actionable way that you can either do through coaching or in real time. In real time, we need to nudge the agent, like right now. We need to solve this right now while it's happening, so that we don't have that long handle time to even have to deal with post call. So anyway, your question was interesting, and it got my mind spinning on not the ROI, but how do you actually achieve the ROI?
Yeah, and Steve, while you were saying that, I was thinking how much effortless you are making that RCA and being able to dig deeper and identify not only the root cause, so that now I know, okay, if this thing happens, my AHT is increasing. But you also go back and you see some of my agents are amazing. They don't take 14 seconds. And now I know exactly what to do as well. So the platform is not only giving me the problem, it's also giving me the solution that is currently working in real world. And all I have to do now is go back and train all the other agents outside the bell curve, basically, and teach them the same thing. That's amazing. Yes.
And it's funny, Manu, because like what's funny is, right, agents are very creative, can be very creative, and the sales opportunity is a great example. So like a sales agent will take a certain amount of training, and a really good sales agent likes to hit their numbers and get that commission. That's what we want them to do, right? But what happens is that they're using rebuttals that aren't working. They get creative, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to change this, and and they figure out a rebuttal that actually works better, and they start killing their numbers. Well, let's face it, not all agents are like, well, I want everybody to do as good as I do. So, but to that point, but now you have that information, and go back to the real time and say, now that we know what best agents do, and we can serve it up to every agent in real time, that's amazing. Like that's where it gets a lot of fun.
Yeah, and when you think about it, the contact center industry has been where you always had 5% top performers, the cream. They were always, treated as the best agent, and everybody else was just there, right? And it happened because these agents in time got creative enough and developed those behaviors. Now you're democratizing those behaviors themselves. Everybody has access to the same knowledge. Yes. And that brings me to my last question. When you think specifically about key steps that a manager should take. So now let's say my company, we got into conversational AI. I have the platform. I understand that this can help me as well. What are some things that I, as a manager, should do that will help me not only be better, but maybe also become a better manager and improve my team's performance?
One of the things that Steve was talking about earlier is about not boiling the ocean. Okay? Right? Take things one step at a time, get that process going. For example, let's say that you're trying to improve the customer experience. So you're trying to reduce the amount of powers to help that your agents are expressing to the customer. Right? Make that a focus. Go out and understand why by agent that they're having that issue. And this is not hard. You can build a series of reports that make that very easy, and they're evergreen. They continuously update on those kinds of things. And then go out and address it. And as those numbers start going down, then you pick another subject that you go after, and you continue to monitor, your first one, and you just keep doing that. Conversation intelligence, especially our platform, have things like automated reports that can be sent out to each agent every week, right? On all of their interactions, so that they can track multiple things during that time frame. So that information is being delivered on a more timely basis. It's on all their interactions. And what you just need to do is hold them accountable, right? So it might take, multiple hours to get ready to do a coaching session one time a month, right? 2, 3, 4 hours to go through and listen to all the calls and set up your coaching event. With Tether, you automate that process. You look at all of their calls. That coaching event takes 2 to 5 minutes in which you go through once a week where they are, right? and then tell them what their goal is going to be for the next week. And then you can monitor that achievement next week. So, the whole coaching process gets condensed from many hours to a very small time frame, and you're doing it on all of their interactions. So the key is just holding them accountable, right, in that space. And people will respond to that because it's a machine. It doesn't have any bias. It's doing it the same way every single time. If they follow the steps that they're supposed to follow, it will give them a good score. And if they say the things the way that they should say them, it will pick it up and they will get credit for it. So it's a self-motivating kind of process. It's not, Don doesn't like me, so he's not going to give me a good score kind of a thing. It's all I got to do is give the greeting, okay? Or all I got to do is not say I'm powerless to help, say this is what I can do, right? Those kinds of things. So it's things that they control. And I think what you'll see is organizations that are doing that get big improvements very quickly, because of all of those things I've just described, the agents will respond positively to them, and the managers will be more successful and spend much less time in getting that improvement.
That's perfect, Don. And in fact, this is a perfect way to close the session as well. If you use conversation analytics right, it's gonna empower your agents, your managers, and your upline to make the right decisions and to ensure there is tangible, real world benefit, because now you understand the why. That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I cannot appreciate your time enough. This was amazingly knowledgeable. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great to chat with you, and we will do it again sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do this again. It was amazing.
All right. Awesome.
Take care.